They called me a nobody. My own daughter-in-law threw my family history into the trash and planned to send me to a nursing home while she took over my house. She thought I was just an old woman with nothing left to lose. She had no idea that the billionaire empire she was desperately trying to merge with was built by me. My name is Margaret Anderson. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's a story about how silence can be the loudest weapon of all. Stay with me because by the end of this journey, her world, the world built on lies, is about to come crashing down. My daughter-in-law called me a nobody. Years later, she needed my help. Part 1: The Betrayal. My name is Margaret Anderson. I am 74 years old. For most of my life, I believed family was the one thing that would always remain. I spent 48 years building a life with my husband, William. Together, we created a family. We created memories, and we built something that I thought would last forever. But I learned something painful. Sometimes, the people closest to you can be the ones who hurt you the most. It happened on a Tuesday evening. It was our family anniversary dinner. The house was filled with warm lights, beautiful decorations, and memories from years gone by. I had prepared a special gift for my daughter-in-law, Rebecca. It was not expensive. It was not something that would impress people at a business meeting, but it had meaning. It was a family necklace that had belonged to my mother, something that carried generations of love and memories. I walked across the room and placed the small box in front of Rebecca. I smiled. I still remember saying, "Rebecca, I wanted you to have this. I hope you will keep it as part of our family." For a moment, the room was silent. Then Rebecca looked at the box. She didn't smile. She didn't thank me. Instead, she looked at me like I had offered her something worthless. She slowly opened the box and her expression changed. "This." She looked at the necklace, then she looked at me. "Margaret, you really thought I would wear this?" Her words were calm, but they were colder than anger. I looked toward my son Daniel. I expected him to say something. I expected him to defend me, but Daniel just looked down at his plate. He said nothing. That silence hurt more than Rebecca's words, because I realized something in that moment. My son was not protecting me. He was choosing not to see me. Later that night, Daniel came to speak with me. We stood together in the hallway, the same hallway where I had watched him grow up. The same hallway where I had comforted him when he was afraid, but that night he was different. "Mom," he said quietly, "maybe it would be better if you considered moving somewhere else." I looked at him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Somewhere else. He avoided my eyes. Maybe a retirement community, a place where you can have people around you. A retirement home. That was the moment I understood. They didn't want my help. They didn't want my memories. They didn't want me. They wanted me gone. I walked back to my room that night. I sat beside the window. For the first time in my life, I felt completely alone, but what they didn't know was this. They saw an old woman who had nothing left. They saw someone weak, someone they could ignore, but they didn't know my past. They didn't know what I had built. They didn't know the truth about the name hidden behind the company they were trying to control. They thought I was nobody, but they had no idea who they were really standing against. Part 2: The Humiliation. After that night, I thought things could not get worse. I was wrong, because Rebecca didn't just want me out of her home. She wanted everyone around her to believe that I had no value. She cared more about appearances than family, and she wanted the world to see her as the powerful woman in control. A few weeks later, Rebecca hosted a large networking gala at our estate. Important business partners arrived, investors arrived, people who could help her grow her influence. To everyone else, it looked like a beautiful celebration. A perfect home, a successful family, a powerful woman surrounded by important people. But I knew the truth. Rebecca wasn't building a family. She was building an image. That evening, she walked through the room with confidence. She laughed loudly, she shook hands, she introduced herself like she owned everything around her, and maybe in that moment she believed she did. Then she saw me. I was standing quietly near the side of the room. I wasn't wearing expensive designer clothes. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was simply watching. Rebecca walked toward me with a smile, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who wanted to remind me where she thought I belonged. "Margaret," she said, "could you help with the guests?" Her tone was polite, but her meaning was clear. She didn't see me as family. She saw me as someone useful, someone invisible, someone who should stay in the background. I accepted the tray because I wanted to avoid creating a scene. I had spent my life protecting my family. Even when they didn't protect me, then it happened. A guest accidentally bumped into me. The wine glass in my hand moved, and a small amount of red wine spilled onto the floor. It was a simple accident, something anyone could understand, but Rebecca saw an opportunity. She immediately turned toward me. Her voice became louder. Everyone nearby stopped talking. Margaret, really? She looked at the stain, then she looked at me. Do you understand how embarrassing this is? I could feel everyone watching. Some people looked uncomfortable, some looked away. Rebecca continued, you need to be more careful. Then she lowered her voice, but maybe this environment is just not for you. Those words were meant to hurt, they were meant to make me feel small. For a moment I felt the pain. I felt the disappointment, not because of Rebecca, but because Daniel was standing nearby, and once again he said nothing. He watched his wife humiliate his mother, and he stayed silent. That was the moment something inside me changed. I realized I had spent years trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided not to see it, so I stopped explaining, I stopped defending myself, I simply looked at Rebecca, and I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I finally understood something. Power does not always announce itself. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the quietest one. Rebecca thought she had won, she thought she had pushed me to the edge. She thought the old woman standing in the corner had nothing left, but she was wrong. Because while she was busy showing everyone the life she wanted them to believe, I was remembering the life I had actually built. And soon, she was going to learn the difference. Part 3: The Hidden Past. For years, Rebecca believed she understood who I was. To her, I was simply an old woman, the mother of her husband, someone who belonged in the background, but what she never knew was that my story began long before she entered our family. The truth was hidden behind decades of silence. After the gala, I returned to the one place where I had always felt like myself, my home office. It was a room most people rarely entered, a room filled with memories, old photographs, documents, and the history of everything William and I had built together. I sat at my desk that night, the same desk where I had spent countless hours making decisions that changed our future. I opened an old leather folder. Inside were the records of a life Rebecca never knew existed. She saw an old woman, but she never saw the woman behind the company. She never saw the years of sacrifice, the risks, the late nights, the moments when William and I had nothing but an idea and the determination to make it real. Before there was a mansion, before there were investments, before people called our family successful, there was only hard work and a dream. I picked up the old fountain pen that William gave me many years ago. It was the same pen I used when I signed the first documents that created our company. MA Capital. Those 2 letters meant nothing to Rebecca, but to me, they represented everything. They represented the years I spent building something from nothing. They represented every difficult decision, every failure, every victory. William always believed in me. He never saw me as someone standing beside him. He saw me as his partner, he used to tell me. Margaret, people will notice the success, but they will never understand the strength it took to create it. At the time, I didn't realize how important those words would become, but now I understood, because Rebecca had made the same mistake many people make. She judged a person by what she could see. She saw my grey hair, she saw my quiet personality, she saw the simple clothes I preferred to wear, and she assumed she knew my value. She never looked deeper, she never asked questions, she never wondered why so many powerful people still respected my name. She never wondered why important decisions were still waiting for my approval. She only saw what she wanted to see. A nobody. That night I closed the folder. I placed my hand on William's photograph. I missed him. I wished he could see what was happening, but I also knew what he would tell me. He would remind me that anger was not the answer. Truth was, I wasn't going to destroy Rebecca. I wasn't going to fight for attention. I didn't need to prove who I was. Soon, the truth would introduce itself. And when that moment came, Rebecca would finally understand, the woman she ignored. It was the woman who held the power all along. Part 4: The Secret Revealed. They say the truth is the most powerful weapon, but only when you know the right moment to reveal it. For weeks, Rebecca continued living inside her illusion. She believed she had won. She believed she was in control. She walked through the house like it belonged to her. She spoke about the future of the company like she had already claimed it. She had no idea that everything she believed was built on a foundation she did not own. That Tuesday morning, I was sitting quietly in the living room. Rebecca was nearby, speaking on the phone. Her voice was filled with confidence. She was talking to one of her business associates. She was discussing a major merger. She was telling them how she would soon take complete control of MA Capital. I listened silently. Not because I was angry, but because I knew something she didn't. The person she was trying to control was the person she had been disrespecting all along. Then the doorbell rang. Rebecca stopped talking. She looked toward the entrance. For a moment, she expected another business partner, another person who would praise her, but it wasn't a business partner. It was Thomas Bennett, the Anderson family estate attorney. For more than 30 years, Thomas had handled our family's most important legal matters. He had been there when William and I built our company. He had been there when we made decisions that shaped our future. Thomas walked into the foyer. He was wearing his classic navy three-piece suit. His expression was serious, professional, focused. Rebecca smiled. She expected him to greet her. She expected the same respect she received from everyone else. But Thomas didn't stop. He didn't congratulate her. He didn't ask about the merger. He didn't even acknowledge her presence. He simply walked past her, straight toward me. The room became silent. Rebecca's smile disappeared. She watched as Thomas approached my chair. He lowered his head slightly, a small gesture, but a gesture filled with respect. "Margaret." That was all he said. Then he handed me a thick navy blue folder. I took it calmly. I could feel Rebecca watching. She didn't understand what was happening. She couldn't understand why someone with that much authority was showing respect to me, the woman she had called a nobody. I opened the folder slowly. Inside were the documents that would change everything: ownership records, legal agreements, the truth that had been hidden for years. Rebecca stood there silently. For the first time, she looked uncertain. The confidence was gone because she finally realized something. The person sitting quietly in the corner was not someone powerless. She was the person who had the final word, the house, the company, the future she was trying to control. It all led back to one person, me, Margaret Anderson. And in that moment, Rebecca finally understood. She had never been standing above me. She had been standing on everything I created. Part 5: The Power They Never Knew. I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything, I didn't need to. People often think power comes from making noise, but real power is quiet. Real power comes from knowing exactly who you are. After Thomas left that morning, the atmosphere in the house changed. Rebecca was still trying to pretend everything was normal, but I could see it. The confidence was fading. The woman who always walked into a room like she owned it was starting to question whether she owned anything at all. She continued making phone calls. She continued trying to save the image she had created. She contacted investors. She contacted business partners. She tried to move forward with the merger. But there was one thing she didn't understand: the support she depended on was never hers. It had always been mine. For years, Rebecca had enjoyed a lifestyle built on the foundation William and I created: the luxury home, the expensive events, the powerful connections. She believed those things came naturally. She believed she deserved them, but she never understood the responsibility behind them. That afternoon, I sat quietly in the conservatory, the same place where William and I used to discuss our dreams. I picked up my phone. I made a few simple calls. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't demand anything. I simply informed the right people about the changes that needed to happen. My voice remained calm. My words were clear, and within hours, everything began to change. The accounts that supported Rebecca's extravagant lifestyle were frozen. The financial arrangements she depended on were reviewed. The business resources she believed were guaranteed were no longer available. For the first time in years, Rebecca had to face reality. She wasn't powerful, she was protected, and there is a big difference. From the top of the staircase, I watched her world begin to fall apart. She walked through the house with her phone in her hand, calling, waiting, searching for answers, but the answers she wanted did not exist. Because the foundation beneath her was never hers, it was borrowed, and now that foundation was gone. I watched her stop in the middle of the room. Her expression changed. The confidence disappeared. The arrogance disappeared. For the first time, Rebecca looked afraid, not because I had attacked her, but because she finally understood the truth. She had spent years trying to make me feel small, but she never realized that I was the one holding everything together. I had never needed to prove my strength. I had been patient. I had been silent, and now, silence was speaking for me. Part 6: The Truth Comes Out. The shareholder meeting was supposed to be Rebecca's final victory. She had spent weeks preparing for that moment. She had practiced her speech. She had prepared her presentation. She had created the perfect image of a confident business leader. To everyone in that room, she looked like someone who knew exactly what she was doing, but she didn't know one important thing. She was walking into a meeting where the truth was waiting for her. The boardroom was filled with shareholders and executives. Rebecca stood at the front of the room. She smiled. She spoke with confidence. She talked about the future. She talked about growth. She talked about taking MA Capital to the next level. But every word she said was built on a misunderstanding. She believed the company belonged to her. She believed she had earned the authority she was using. She believed the quiet old woman she had ignored was no longer important. Then, the doors at the back of the boardroom opened. The entire room became silent. I walked in. I remember that moment clearly. I wasn't wearing the clothes Rebecca was used to seeing. I wasn't wearing a simple cardigan. I was wearing the suit I wore 30 years earlier. The same suit I wore when William and I signed the first documents that created our company. The same suit that represented the beginning of everything. I walked slowly toward the table. I didn't rush. I didn't need to. Everyone turned to look at me. Rebecca stopped speaking. The confidence on her face disappeared. She looked at me like she was seeing a completely different person because she was, for the first time. She wasn't looking at Margaret, the mother-in-law she had ignored. She was looking at Margaret Anderson, the founder, the person behind the company, the person who had built the foundation beneath her entire world. I walked to the head of the table and I sat down. The silence in that room was powerful. No one needed an explanation. The respect in everyone's eyes told the story. Then I looked toward Daniel, my son, the person I had protected my entire life. He stood there frozen. I watched his expression change. First confusion, then disbelief, then shame. He finally understood. He remembered every moment he stayed silent. Every moment he allowed Rebecca to disrespect me. Every moment he chose comfort instead of defending his own mother. The truth finally reached him. The woman he thought was weak was the strongest person in the room. The woman he thought needed help was the person who had built the life he enjoyed. Daniel looked at me, but this time, he wasn't looking at someone invisible. He was looking at the person he had failed to see. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to, because sometimes, the truth does not need to be announced. It only needs to be revealed. And that day, everyone finally knew who Margaret Anderson really was. Part 7: The Consequences. The meeting ended, but for Rebecca, that was only the beginning. Some people think losing money is the greatest punishment, but they are wrong. The hardest thing to lose is the respect of people who once believed in you. For years, Rebecca had built her identity around success. She wanted people to see her as powerful, important, untouchable. She spent so much time creating that image that she forgot one important thing. An image built on lies will eventually fall. After the meeting, everything changed. The same people who once surrounded her started walking away. The same partners who once listened to her every word stopped returning her calls. The same people who admired her confidence now saw the truth behind it. I watched her walk through the company hallway, the place where she once walked proudly, the place where she believed everyone respected her. But now she was alone. People passed by without saying a word. No greetings, no smiles, no admiration, only silence. The power she thought she had was gone, but the most difficult moment was not watching Rebecca lose her status. It was watching Daniel finally understand what he had done. After the meeting, he stood outside the boardroom. I could see the pain on his face. He looked like someone who had just woken up from a dream where he believed everything was fine. He slowly walked toward me. For a moment he tried to speak, but no words came out. What could he say? How could he explain years of silence? How could he explain choosing not to defend the woman who had always defended him? His shoulders were lowered, his eyes were filled with regret. Mom. That was all he managed to say. I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time I saw my son again, not the man who followed someone else's influence, not the man who ignored my pain, but the little boy I once held in my arms, the little boy who used to tell me he would always protect me. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to remind him of every moment he hurt me, but I also understood something. Regret is a heavy punishment. And Daniel was finally carrying the weight of his choices. He had spent years protecting the wrong person. He had lost the trust of the one person who had always believed in him. The empire Rebecca tried to control was falling, but something more important had been broken. A family bond, a relationship between a mother and her son. As I looked at them, I realized something. Winning is not always about watching someone else lose. Sometimes, winning is finally seeing the truth clearly and accepting that some people have to face the consequences of their own choices. Part 8: The Final Choice. A few weeks passed after the truth was revealed. The house became quiet again, but this time, the silence felt different. It was no longer the silence of rejection, it was the silence of peace. I returned to the garden where I used to spend my mornings with William. It was the same place where I once found comfort, the same place where I remembered the life we built together. I stood among the flowers and thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the pain, the loneliness. For a moment I wondered how things could have been different, but then I realized something. I couldn't change the past. I could only decide what kind of person I wanted to be moving forward. That afternoon, Rebecca came to see me. She looked different. Not because of her clothes, not because of her appearance, but because the arrogance was gone. The woman who once walked into every room believing she was better than everyone else was standing in front of me quietly. She didn't come to argue, she didn't come to demand anything. She came because she finally understood. She looked at me, and for the first time she truly saw me, not as an old woman, not as someone in her way, but as a person, a mother. A woman who had spent her entire life building something meaningful. Margaret. Her voice was softer than I had ever heard. She apologized. She admitted the things she had done. She admitted that she judged me without knowing my story. I listened. Because sometimes people need to lose everything before they finally understand what they had. I could have closed the door, I could have walked away, and no one would have blamed me. Rebecca had hurt me, she had humiliated me. She had tried to erase my place in my own family, but I remembered something William always believed. He once told me. True strength is not proven by how much you can destroy, it is proven by how much you can forgive. So I gave Rebecca a choice, not a free pass, not a way to return to the life she had before, a choice to begin again. But this time, with honesty, with humility, with responsibility, she would have to learn that respect is earned, not demanded. She would have to understand that family is not about status. It is about love, it is about loyalty. It is about the people who stand beside you when there is nothing to gain. Rebecca looked at me, and I could see the answer in her eyes for the first time. She was not choosing pride, she was choosing change. As I watched her walk away from the garden that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. I didn't win because Rebecca lost. I won because I never lost myself. They called me a nobody. They underestimated me. They forgot my value. But my worth was never decided by their opinions. My strength was never measured by their approval. I was Margaret Anderson, a mother, a wife, a builder, a woman who survived betrayal and found her way back to herself, because sometimes the greatest power is not proving people wrong, it is knowing who you are, even when the world refuses to see it. In the end, I didn't destroy them. I just removed the masks they were wearing. True power isn't about crushing the people who wronged you, it's about having the strength to offer them a lesson instead of a revenge. I learned that my value was never defined by their opinion of me, but by the dignity I kept when everything else was stripped away. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey of power and redemption, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more stories of hidden strength. Thank you for listening.